There are a number of vulnerability scanners, some free, some commercial. The best ones usually are commercial, although there are some very good free ones out there. And there's one that has a long history called Nessus. The Windows version of Nessus actually is not free, but you can get a free home version. You can go and get Nessus from Tenable, and you can install it, which we've done. You'll have to sign up for an evaluation license. So I've installed Nessus, and I'm just going to click here in 2016, and I'm going to go down to Nessus, and there it is, or actually it's down in Tenable Network Security, and I'm going to expand that. Here's the Nessus web client, and I'll click this, and so it opens a browser to the Nessus software, and I'm going to continue to the website not recommended. It's just because it has a self-signed certificate. Now I need to create an account. I'll just create an account. I'll call it admin with a password of capital P A $W0RD, and click the little show password to make sure I didn't type something different. Click continue. And this is just home. It's a home scanner, and I need the activation code that comes in the mail. So I'm going to check my email here. I got an activation code right here for Nessus Home. Let me right click and copy, minimize this, see if I can copy and paste here. Yeah, I can. Thankfully, VMware allows us to have a clipboard that's shared between the host and the VMs. Let me continue. Now, this host has got to have internet setup. And so it's right now what it's doing is it's downloading the latest signatures and plugins. So we're going to give it a moment to do that. I'm going to pause the video. And when it's done, I'm going to come back and we're going to scan our subnet. Okay, that took quite a while. Let's now create a new scan. And what kind of scan would we like to do? There are all sorts of options here. We could do an advanced scan. We could audit the cloud infrastructure. That's cool, but I think we have to pay for the pro version. We could look for a particular CVE, bad lock, and shell shock. We could do a basic network scan. We could do an audit for patches. We'd need to provide a credential. We could check for the drown CVE. We could do a host discovery, a simple scan. We could look for the Intel AMT security bypass. You can see the CVE numbers associated with this. Some of these scans you have to buy the upgraded version. We could do a malware scan. What else do we have? Shadow broker scan, Spectre and Meltdown scan, WannaCry ransomware scan, web app tests. Let's do a couple of these. Let's start with a basic host discovery right here. We're just going to do a host discovery, and I have several hosts running, a number of them. So I'm just going to click host discovery right here. Let this fire up, and we can give this some kind of name, host test, and put it in whatever folder, don't really care. And why don't we just scan the subnet as it is, 192.168.75.0/24. And let's run this thing. Anything special? Do we want to schedule it? No, we just want to run it as it is. Now for discovery, we'll just use the defaults. We can use default reporting, default advanced, any special plugins. There are no special plugins. Go back to the settings. Let's save this thing. Scan is saved. And so now what we can do is this thing can be run on demand. So let's check it. And there's a little play button over here, a launch button. So I have clicked launch. And we'll let this thing run. So it's going to run for a bit, and then it will come back in a moment, and we'll see what we find. So I'm going to pause the recording while it runs the scan. The scan is finished. Now, it was a simple discovery scan, so let's just click it. And we can see that these hosts were discovered. And if we click, say, one of them, we can see that it was discovered, and there you go. A little bit of info, click that. And it describes that we did an ARP scan and an ICMP scan and a TCP scan and a UDP scan. and the host is up, it did reply to an ARP query. Okay, so we did a basic scan there. Let's add a new scan. So why don't we do a basic network scan? Let's click Basic Network Scan. And in the Basic Network Scan, we'll call it My Network Scan. And it can be in the My Scans folder, and we'll do the subnet 192.168.75.0/24. And if we had credentials to add, we could add them for SSH or Windows. Let's say that, okay, we think we know some credentials, MSF admin for Metasploitable. Let's click SSH. And so the username is MSF admin. And the authentication method is just a password, as MSF admin just uses a password. So do this again, MSF admin, and the password MSF admin, because that's what it has. Elevate privileges well, let's just not even elevate privilege. So let's leave it at that. So we've got that one. And what about Windows? We know that we have a password for administrator. And the password is capital $PA$W0RD. And so let's save these. So let's just go back for a moment. Let me just click My Network Scan really quick. And so let's configure this really quick. See if there's anything. So we've got credentials. Any special plugins? No. Discovery. So this is what we're going to do. We're going to do a SYN scan if necessary. We're going to ping. Any assessments. Try to avoid potential false alarms. No CGI scanning. Reports. Just sort of the default report stuff. Let's save and let's run this scan here. So going back to the scans, My Scans, I am selecting, oops, not that one, My Network Scan, and I'm going to launch it right now. And we'll let this one run and see what we find just on the network, and then we'll try another scan. So let's let this run. We can see it's spinning right now. As soon as it's done, we'll come back. The scan is complete. Let's see what we found. I'll click it. And we can see that host number 12 had these levels of vulnerabilities. Blue is just informational stuff. Green is low risk. Yellow is medium. Orange is high. And red is critical. So let's just click some of these and see what they are. So when we click them, we can see the different vulnerability levels, some of them just being informational here. And there's another page we need to go to. So we can go back and we can look at each of these and all the vulnerabilities. Now I expect Metasploitable to have the highest number, and indeed it does. Let's click Metasploitable, and we can see critical issues here. And so we could click some of these, like some of the ones that I happen to know are very high would be things like the VSFTPD. Let's see if it spotted it. Now, you have to realize that vulnerability scanners are only as good as the signatures that they are loaded with. If they don't have the right signatures, they won't discover certain vulnerabilities. So this is, when you use a vulnerability scanner, you cannot assume that it is the end all and be all of all your reporting. You should use several vulnerability scanners. So I'm just checking here, and this one vulnerability, you could gain a shell remotely. There's a little description, and you can see more about it and the port that is vulnerable, and you can read up more about it. So going back to the scans and looking at this network scan here, we can see that all except 152 have reported vulnerabilities of some kind or another. 254 has a very low impact vulnerability. Server 2012 has a number of vulnerabilities, so some are mixed. So when I open up one of these mixed ones, I expect to probably see, yeah, they're the critical ones. And so we can read up about all these various ones. So this very first one here, vulnerability in S channel could allow remote code execution. That's what you don't want to have happen. Or if you are the hacker, you do want to do remote code execution, because that allows me to execute code arbitrarily into a machine that I've compromised. And I can read up on the MS security bulletin here. I can see what systems are impacted by it. And I can see whether or not something has been patched. It says this particular DLL has not been patched. The version happens to be this right now, but it should have been upgraded to that version there. And the port you would attack is 445. So we can see quite a few vulnerabilities that were made available or that were discovered in this scan. We can go through all of these and just take a look. So going back here now, in fact, going back to my scans, if we look, let's just do one more. Let's go new scan. So we have done host discovery, basic network scan. And is there anything else? How about, why don't we see if we can scan for malware? Let's scan for malware on Windows and Unix systems. I'm just going to click this scan here. And my malware scan. And I encourage you to play with this yourself. And so let's do the subnet again, 192.168.75.0/24. And let's save this. And, it says that we need an SSH credential. Let's go to credentials. And the SSH credential, add a credential. I thought that we had one already. The credential is a password. It's for the user msfadmin, and the password is msfadmin also. So we have that. Let's save it. And let's pick my malware scan, and let's launch it. And when it's through scanning for malware, we'll come back and take a look at the results. The malware scan is complete, and we can click it to open it up. Look at the vulnerabilities. So we see some serious vulnerabilities. A bind shell backdoor. Let's take a look here. So this is on 131. No surprises that it is available, or that vulnerability exists on Metasploitable. So that we have that vulnerability. A shell is listening on the remote port without any authentication being required. An attacker may use it by connecting to the remote port and sending commands directly. Okay. How many more do we have? Unreal IRCD backdoor. Let's click this one. This is critical. The remote IRC server is a version of the Unreal IRCD with a backdoor that allows an attacker to execute arbitrary code on the affected host. It too is on Metasploitable. No surprises. Other vulnerabilities? Let's scroll and see any others. So we see some informational things here, but those are the two critical ones. What's this netstat port scanner? SSH. Nessus was able to run netstat on the remote host to enumerate open ports. Okay, well, that's not that big a deal to do a port scanner. All right, other vulnerabilities? OS identification. Using a combination of remote probes, it is possible to guess the name of a remote operating system in use. Yeah, well, we've done that several times. Any others? Let's see. Nessus scan information. This plugin displays for each tested host information about the scan itself. All right, so these are informational, but there are two real critical vulnerabilities. And I can tell you, quite honestly, there are more than this. But this is what netstat, this is what Nessus has discovered. And it has discovered 8 hosts with 2 vulnerabilities on this particular one. Now, there are more, but this is what Nessus has been programmed to discover. So that is using Nessus as a vulnerability analysis tool.